By Edmonton Decoy.
Mr. Speaker, during budget estimates, the Minister of Infrastructure made a stunning admission. The Minister finally admitted that the cost of public-private partnerships are much higher than traditional builds. He said, and I quote, "Usually the upfront cost is higher in a P3 than a traditional build." To the Minister, why is your government so eager to build Alberta using this costly and ineffective means of financing projects?
Honourable Minister.
Wayne, I'm going to go first.
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister to supplement, but I also wanted to suggest to the Honourable Member that when you look at the financing package and the upfront costs is what the Minister had talked about, there is an upfront component of cash and there is an ability for us to transfer the risk of the construction to the proponent, which is also built into the net present value of how we calculate it. The idea, Mr. Speaker, is to get the greatest value for the taxpayer both today and into the future life of the project.
Honourable Member.
Given that this back-in-debt budget will take Albertans down a path of paying billions of dollars in interest and service fees to banks, why doesn't this government show some respect for taxpayers and future generations and reconsider its dangerous approach to relying so heavily on trading debt for infrastructure?
Honourable Minister.
You know, Mr. Speaker, it's rather interesting. Last week I happened to be at a luncheon with our Federal Finance Minister, Mr. Flaherty. And I was telling him, he asked me what we were going to do with infrastructure and how we were going to fund it in the future. And he was on his way to the IMF to talk about interest rates and where things were going. Both he and I talked about the value to taxpayers about using capital markets and P3s because it's the best way to get the best value for taxpayers. He was absolutely shocked when I said, well, the right-wing people across the way, well, the Wildrose Alliance Party was opposed to P3s, and he couldn't quite figure that out because they're supposed to be all about taxpayer value. Mr. Speaker, we are.
Honourable Member.
We're very concerned how they're billing Alberta and not building Alberta. Given that this government won't produce an infrastructure priority list and instead is mortgaging our children's futures with these costly borrowing schemes and cannot convince Albertans that the additional billions of dollars in interest being taken from their pockets isn't being done so for political reasons, will the Minister commit to giving Albertans the P3 they are really asking for, a public prioritised project list?
Mr. Speaker, once again, that hardly made sense and was hard to follow and misquoted in my budget. P3s save money when you do a public sector, private sector comparator over the life of the project. P3s have saved this province lots of money. In fact, we've saved over $2.2 billion since we started building with P3s. That's money that's gone into building infrastructure for all kinds of projects in this province, Mr. Speaker. So that would be a lot less schools in your areas and ours if you didn't build with P3s, Mr. Speaker. Make sure when you quote somebody, you quote the whole